when it doesn't happen to me, I make it happen. My name is Madeleine King, and I live in Calgary. I was a two-term city councillor, and now I'm president of the Downtown Rotary Club. I have 2 adult children and 3 grandchildren, and in my 70s, I refound romance and married again. I found romance in a surprising way. I went with a friend on a bus tour of Ireland with no thoughts at all. And there on that trip was a man, now my husband, who was grieving the loss of his wife. And we formed a friendship, but not much of one. And then amazingly, a year later, we found ourselves on another bus trip, this one to the Holy Land, Israel, Palestine, and Jordan. And the friendship developed more. And then when we came back, we started hiking together in the Rockies, and that's when the romance blossomed. Well, my teenage years had a lot of challenges. When I was 13, 14, I developed in England really serious nasal allergies, and they determined that I couldn't live in England, and so they shipped me off to a boarding school in Switzerland. Well, when I was there, I misbehaved myself quite a bit and got thrown out. And the school principal told my father that I was going to come to a very, very bad end. That really affected my relationship with my father, and it affected my self-perception. So after that, yeah, I had a wild few years, my father died a few years later, and I wasn't able to attend high school, and so it was a very challenging time. I knew that I couldn't live with my father's low understanding of me, and indeed the school in Switzerland. I couldn't be that person. I couldn't cope with myself in that light. And not only do I want young people to know that there is a way forward. Indeed, in many of those years, I was suicidal. But thank goodness I was able to keep doors open. But also, I want parents to know, because so many parents are really, really scared when their teenage children go off the rails, as I did. And yet, what made it possible for me, I think, was that my mother loved me and believed in me, always believed the best in me. And that gave me the courage to push through. I spent a lot of time on my own and reading and trying to find my own philosophy of life and my own faith. And I did find faith, and that was, I was incredibly lucky. I felt that God spoke to me, and I developed a faith that said that I need to steward my life, but in the end, what happens is God's decision. And so when, in my terms, when God makes a decision that isn't what I'm hoping for, then I calm myself by saying that it's His decision, and I need to find the silver lining. And each time I've been able to find the silver lining. I was very, very social, but I would say to myself, boys may come and boys may go, but the results of exams go on forever. So despite having this wild social life, I actually buckled down and did lots of exams and was finally able to get into university Eventually, I found my way into law, and as soon as I started studying law, I loved it. I knew that I'd found my vocation. And so in England, I became a barrister, a courtroom lawyer, and I practiced like that for almost 10 years. So it was a really fascinating time for me. In terms of responsibility to myself, I think what I found that surprised me in all the wildness was that when my life was in order, when I got up at a regular time and went to bed at a regular time and ate sensible food and made good friends that were deep friendships, and concentrated on my possible career, then I felt so much better. It didn't give me the sudden highs that the wildlife did, but it gave me much more a deep joy, and so I chose that way. About 20 years ago, my son told me that he had developed his own mission statement, and I was fascinated, and so I developed my own, and I keep it on my phone, and it's tremendously helpful to me. A couple of the things that I know so well is that first and foremost, my role is to use the talents that God gave me in order to help others. The second thing is to cherish those I love, family and friends, and of course my husband. And the third important one is to steward my health. Both my parents died from leukemia before they reached the age of 70. And yet they were both fit and healthy people. And so again, I learned that we can only do so much for our health. But for me, yes, I have a responsibility to steward it. I went to a conference in New Orleans, and there was an absolutely wonderful session. It was how you can achieve things when you're not in control. And what that session was about was servant leadership. I had always before then thought that being a leader meant being out in front. But what I learned from that session was that sometimes you can be out in front, but when you're not, when other people are out in front, you can always make the circle stronger, the team stronger, by supporting the team. That is what servant leadership is all about. And it's been an absolute boon to me since then, because I no longer have to be out in front, although I'm happy to do so, but I'm always part of a team that I can contribute to. I really enjoy working in teams, and when I have the opportunity, empowering people through seeing their individual skill sets. I very much believe in working to other people's strengths and ignoring as much as possible their shortcomings, because that's the way that you make a great team. There are lots of difficult relationships when you're not choosing the specific people that you're going to be working with or interacting with. It's true in the family as well. But again, I feel that if I concentrate on people's strengths and live in my relationship with them into their strengths, then I actually find that I can respect and admire them so much that I've been very fortunate. Either I can ignore the bad parts, skirt around them, or I can actually talk with them about their shortcomings And if they feel sufficiently positive about our relationship, then they react perfectly fine. They often know what their shortcomings are. And so we can talk about how we can deal with it and whether we can skirt around it, whether they can change, and why it is that they're behaving in that less than perfect way. When I started as a barrister, I was in a set of chambers in England, in London, and that was something that when you got into a set of chambers, at that time you would be expected to stay there for your whole life. So there were about 15 to 20 people in a set of chambers, and it was a very close relationship. And the place where I was last a student in that role was somewhere that I wanted to spend my working life. A man had blackballed me. He apparently said in the meeting that they had one woman in chambers and that was enough, unless someone came along who was either brilliant or beautiful, and I was neither. So it was incredibly challenging for me, because before that I had believed that if I put all my effort into something, that it would be successful. And so that showed me that that wasn't true. And I had to pick myself up and find another opportunity, which I did a couple of months after that. At first I told the clerk, who was like our agent, that I would give up the law. And he said to me, I look at you when you come back from a day in court and I know you're passionate about this and you won't give up. And I was buoyed up by that and by the fact that he had faith in me. We can't do it on our own. We each have some skill sets, and that's what makes it a wonderful community. As parents, we have to work at seeing our children's strengths and give them the courage to live into those strengths, to express themselves clearly, and know that if they are right-minded, if I can put it that way, and respectful of others, that they can and should speak up for their truths and to be part of good teams. So I think that my parents were very influential in that. I remember an early time going to the theatre with my mother, and she asked me afterwards my view, and I prevaricated because I was scared to express my view. And she said, no, that's not good enough. You have to be prepared to have an opinion and to be able to express it, and then to listen to the opinions of others. It's very easy to doubt our own abilities. I mean, I feel that we're all somewhere on a ladder. You know, I can look at my life and say I've been a failure, because when I was a child, I wanted to develop a cure for a disease that was affecting the whole world. I wanted to save the whole world. But I discovered that I'm not capable of doing that. I'm not that sort of person. I don't come up to those levels that maybe I would have wished for myself. But on the other hand, there are some people I've been able to help, and some situations that I've really been able to have an impact, make a difference. And so I can look at it with despair, or I can look at it with gratitude that I've been able to do what I have. So thinking about tough things that have happened in my life, One of them was in 2004. It was early in the summer, and later that summer I was facing an election to be re-elected as a city councillor. And I went for my normal mammogram. And at the end, they said that I needed to have it done again. And they told me that, that they weren't happy with what they saw, and that they thought it was the beginning of breast cancer. And so then there were a number of different things that I just couldn't believe it. I'm a very, very healthy person. And so it was that old thing of, how can this be happening to me? It's just not real. It just can't happen. And my children still need me, my constituents need me, and what am I going to do? So apart from anything else, I then had to work out what to tell other people. There was my campaign team, and there was whether I was going to go ahead with trying to get re-elected. They told me that it was very treatable and that I could wait until after the election to have the necessary surgery. So I decided that I definitely would run, that I would trust in my good fortune, and that I would be strong for other people. But it was tough. And I looked into whether I should tell constituents, whether I should tell the world. And that told me that if you're going for a job interview and you know that you have something coming up medically, you should tell your potential employer. So because I had surgery coming up, I decided that I needed to tell people. And in the election, my opponent said that that was a ruse to get people's support and sympathy. That made it tough. Anyway, I was successful in the election, and then I had the first surgery, and then they weren't satisfied, so I had the second surgery. And the third surgery, a few months later, was major surgery. Major surgery, 3 surgeons for 10 hours, but it was very successful. And so what I found after that, I should say that because of the surgeries, I didn't need radiation or chemotherapy. So I was very fortunate in keeping my energy level. But what I found was after that, it had been such an emotional roller coaster. And when it was done, I was able to treasure every single day, every relationship that I had. It made a huge difference in how I looked at my life. And yes, I'm one of the fortunate ones, and I recognize what a turmoil it is for everyone going through it. I think gratitude is an enormous part of life, and I've read those things too. If you're born with gratitude, then I think you hopefully keep it all through your life. And I sometimes read things about people learning to grow into gratitude, and I hope that those are meaningful for people, because when you live into gratitude, it just makes life so much nicer. I grew up in a family with plenty. But it was slightly unusual because my father was a socialist. He was an entrepreneur and a very successful one. But his greatest wish was that his children would learn other values than money. And his influence was very countercultural. He wanted us to feel comfortable that we could live in a bare attic without the need for money. So that has been important to me. And so finding the amount of money that I needed in my life has been a lifelong learning. And so when I was a young woman working as a lawyer in England, I had a lot more money than I needed. And actually so much so that I split my income into 4 parts. And so 25% went for saving, 25% went for my spending, 25% for charity, and 25% for my friends. And so during that time I was able to help them buy cars and apartments and television sets and start on careers, do a whole lot of different things like that. I found my calling in doing volunteer work and then becoming a consultant in the non-profit sector. When I was on city council, then I had a steady income, and it wasn't great, but quite honestly, I worked so many hours. I think I worked about 85, 90 hours a week. So I didn't get the opportunity to spend anything, so that was absolutely fine. When I left City Hall, it was the first time that I had been on my own, and I made some investment mistakes, and I was without a job. And then we had the crash. And so I really learned to balance what my financial needs are with the rest of my needs in life. And having that ability to decide how important money was to me and career success was very important in listening to my soul and understanding what success means for me. And success means having a life that I'm content in. What makes me content is I have a wonderful companionship, love with my husband. And what a gift that is in my 70s. Absolutely fantastic. I'm surrounded by loving family and warm friendships, lots of them. And I am using the skills that I was given and the experience to make a difference in the lives of other people. And there's a phrase, a friend in need is a friend indeed. And I've often thought that that means that when someone needs you, that is a gift to you. I believe that the more you give, the more you get. And that's certainly true for me. And so I love good times with my friends. I love to party. But I also love to be there for them. And I enjoy their companionship and everything that they bring in my life. Life needs to be full of wonder and fun and excitement. And yeah, when it doesn't happen to me, I make it happen.